Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, right on the dot. It's Paula from On a String, and I thought I would do a really easy demonstration today on how to use Shibori silk. So Shibori silk is something that is a really great fragile fabric, which is perfect for using in a bead embroidery project. So hi Lorraine. So I'm going to do a demonstration today on how to use Shibori silk, and because it's Facebook Live, unfortunately I can't actually talk directly other than comments. So if you make a comment, I'll do my best to answer it. So bear with me while I sort of set up, and I've got to move the camera around and things like that and show different angles. But today I'm going to actually demonstrate how to make an earring with a Shibori silk background, and it's to match one that I've already made, and I've made a pendant as well. So I'm actually going to go through and show you how to use Shibori in a really easy way for a bead embroidery project. Hi Dee, hi Angie, nice to see you both here as well. So bear with me while I just flip the camera around, and by all means, anyone who's watching, shout out, do a comment. I'll do my best to read the comments and answer questions as they come up on the screen as well. This demonstration will probably go for about 45 minutes, so it will be available afterwards on my site, on my Facebook page. So if you've got something else you need to do, by all means, go off and do that, and you can come back and watch it later. And I've also put a bit of a guide up on my website in the blog area about how I use Shibori silk as well. So there'll be some tips in there too that you can refresh your memory on as well. So bear with me while I just flip the camera around, and hopefully you don't get to see the roof and all those other things, and set up so that I can actually show you what we're going to be doing today. So Shibori silk is something that I've used in a couple of different projects. And this is one here that is a cuff that I made, I think in about 2015, and it was for the Bead Society of Victoria's annual challenge. And our challenge is when we have to use particular beads, so things like these pyramid shaped beads, the crystal rivoli, and a couple of these sort of spiky things were part of that element. And what I did was actually used a piece of Shibori silk to actually back that cuff, so that you can see that the silk is a real feature of that. It's not just about the beads, it's about the silk. And that's what I really like about using Shibori, because it gives you a really good background and foundation for your piece, and you don't have to cover the whole thing with beads. So that was a project I did. That one's actually got the ultra suede backing and the edging, and it's got an asymmetrical cuff as well, so it joins up like that. So that's one project that I did a few years ago. But when I was first introduced to it, it was with a class I did at Bead and Button with Sherry Serafini. And this is a plain Shibori silky, just a plain grey. But this beaded cuff, I think this is my most liked picture on Pinterest, because I've had it up for a few years, but everyone tends to love this one, and it is a really gorgeous piece to wear. You can see it's got lots of embellished crystals and pearls and drops and things like that. Hi Debbie, nice to see you here too. It's got some little raised monties in there as well, some captured larger beads, and then a lovely beautiful edge. And the beauty of using Shibori in this type of a project is that it's a free form, so you pretty much get to make whatever you want to make with something like this, and you can have the design yourself. So this was one, as I said, I did a class with Sherry Serafini in the States at Bead and Button, and that was my first introduction to using Shibori silk. So one of my lovely customers, Alex, asked me to do this demonstration on how I use Shibori today. So I played around and I made a pendant first, and you can see that here. It's got the beautiful background of Shibori silk on it, and then some beads and pearls, etc. And then that's just hung from a long chain. And I then went on and made a matching earring to that set as well. And what I'm going to do today is actually demonstrate how I made that earring. So this one will have a pair. So that's the idea, is that you'll get to see the completed set when this is finished. So one of the things with Shibori, it comes in a strip like this, and it's pleated already, and it's got beautiful dyed finish on it. Often it's like a tie-dye sort of look, and it has a right and a wrong side. That's the wrong side. It's not as shiny. That is the right side there. So you need to be careful when you're actually using it that you put the right side to the front. Hi, Lavinia. Hi, Cheryl. What are you going to learn from this, Cheryl? Hello, Lynn. So this is one that's got multiple colours in it, you know, a bit of a hot pink, rainbow, some aqua, yellow and green. And I got this one from Beyond Beadery. So Beyond Beadery is a store in the States, and I've tended to pick up these pieces of Shibori silk when I've been at Bead Button, but you need to look online and see where else it might be available. So Shibori silk comes in a piece, you know, that's 18 inches by 4 inches. So it's 4 inches when you expand it out, and that's what we'll use in this particular project. So I have another piece here that I've been experimenting with, which is this sort of hot pinkish, purpley and silver piece. And I've already cut some bits off that. So depending upon how big your piece is, if you're doing a cuff, you'll need a bigger piece. But for these smaller components, I can actually just cut that up. So what I actually did first was create a template. So because I wanted to have an earring that wasn't too big, you can see the difference in the finished size. I made a template first in this sort of little teardrop pattern, and that's what my foundation fabric is going to be cut out of, and then I'll attach the silk to that. So for a finished earring, it's actually going to be a little bit bigger than what our template size actually is because of the edging components, etc., that we're going to put on it. So once I've created my little paper template, and so whether that's a circle, a teardrop, you know, like with the cuff, this was a much larger sort of S-type shape piece. Once you've got your template created, you need to then cut out a piece of foundation fabric in the same shape. So foundation fabric is something that's called Lacey's Stiff Stuff or Nicole's Bead Backing. Comes in sort of different colours, and I've chosen a grey colour for this. And it's like a really heavyweight felt. It's not like felt that you'd buy at Spotlight. It's actually a bit denser than that. And it really is quite stiff. So as a foundation fabric, it is absolutely perfect to use with the very fragile and soft Shibori silk, and it gives us a really good foundation to actually bead through. So what I'm going to do is actually show you how I attach a piece of Shibori silk to a piece of foundation fabric and then add some beads on that. So bear with me while I thread the needle. I'm actually using Fireline for this. It's not necessarily my favourite thread because I don't really like the way that it, you know, is dirty on your hands and things like that. But for something like this, it's ideal. Fireline has a really strong tension to it, so it's great for pulling through, you know, multiple thread passes. Excuse me while I put my glasses on so I can see how I can thread the needle. Pulling through into a foundation fabric, you know, we're going to do multiple thread passes through I'm going to get another needle, multiple thread passes through this. So it will need to have something that's fairly sturdy to come through. And that's what I really like about Fireline, because we're going to be going through the Shibori silk, the foundation fabric, and then a backing fabric at the end. So it does need to go through three lots of fabric. Oh, gosh. You'd reckon I'd be able to thread a needle, wouldn't you, after all these 15 years of beading, but it's letting me down right now. Anyway, nearly there. Okay, how does a beater? Oh, hello Irene from Brisbane, lovely to see you here. And hello Gail Tracy, who I know who that really is, but nice to see you here too, Jackie. Now, as I said, I've got my little piece of foundation fabric here. And I've got my piece of Shibori silk. Now, of course, the Shibori silk, I'm not going to cut that into that teardrop shape. What I want to make sure is that the pleats, etc., that are within the shibori are featured as part of my piece here. So I'm going to tack this very gently onto my foundation fabric so that the pleats actually remain as part of it. And as I said earlier, I've got to get the right or wrong side. That's actually the wrong side of that fabric, and that's the right side. So I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see that on the camera, but that's a really dull side and that's the shiny side of it. So I want to make sure that I've got the shiny side showing. And what I've done is I've put a little tiny knot in the end of my fire line here. And I'm just going to pull that through the foundation fabric and the silk and just capture it right on the edge. You can see there, I'm really only just going right through the very edge of that foundation fabric there. I don't want to go too far in. You can leave a little tail on your thread, that's okay. And I only want to have a little tiny stitch on the front, right to the edge of my piece. So with that little tiny stitch, I don't want that to be too big on the front because we don't want to be able to see that. And then I'm just going to very gently do a larger stitch at the back, probably about 1 centimetre, I suppose. Come through to the front of my piece, like that. And then just do another little tiny stitch on the front. So I'm really just tacking down gently this Shibori silk all the way around my foundation piece. And I've already got the guide of what the finished piece is going to look like, this teardrop shape, and we'll then trim that Shibori silk to match that shortly. So I'm being really careful to make sure that some of the pleats stay within their place, within the silk. So you can see there I've done a large stitch again at the back, and then I'll do another little tiny one at the front. So we will cover these tiny edge stitches at some point, but I'm just sort of making sure that I'm tacking down this Shibori silk by going through the back. You can see the large stitches at the back. We're not going to be able to see these at a later stage. They'll all be covered up. This is the beauty of bead embroidery. It's a really forgiving technique in terms of having threads loose and all that sort of thing. You can hide a multitude of sins by the time we put foundation fabric and backing fabric. And you can see here I'm really being careful to just do little tiny stitches on the front of this piece, but maintaining those pleats all the way through. Hello, Peggy. Hello, Talone. It's nice to see some familiar names popping up. Peggy, what time is it over there in Raleigh, North Carolina? Hope it's not middle of the night for you. It's 11 o'clock in the morning here. And I hope this time sort of suits people. I sort of moved this from the Friday to the Saturday. So if this time suits, I'll continue to sort of do these Facebook Lives on a Saturday morning as well. So you can see there I've just got those little tiny tacking stitches all the way around now. And my next step will be to actually trim off the edge of that Shibori silk, so that we're retaining that teardrop shape. So can you see there I've got the little tiny tacking stitches all the way around. And now what I want to do is trim off this excess. So you actually need a pair of reasonably sharp scissors to do something like that. But what I want to make sure is that I keep those pleats in formation as much as possible. So I'm just trimming off that excess now. And you can see there's all my little pleats on my edge. And I'm actually trimming it with the front side down and the foundation fabric showing up so that I can see where my cut lines need to be. So you can see there now, I've now trimmed that particular piece all the way around, and because of the way that I've tacked it down, some of those pleats will remain in place. Lavinia, it does fray, but I'm actually going to show you when we cover it over how to avoid that fraying. So I've got a couple of samples here that show where it can fray without a covering edge. So you can see here, see how the Shibori silk just sort of lifts up and frays a little bit just there? And that's because I actually haven't covered over that edge. So when you do a finished piece, I tend to do a much deeper netted edge on the inside so that you don't actually have that fraying coming all the way around. So I'll show you how I'll do that. And that avoids that, you know, sort of messy shibori look that can happen if you don't actually do that trim all the way around. So one of the fun things we're going to do now is to decorate the front of it. And I've kept this really simple for this demonstration because I don't want it to take up everybody's whole day. But you can see here, the beauty of something like this is that it's got some beads on it and it's got a really full-on decorated edge. But the feature is actually the shibori. So seeing that pleated shibori all the way through, that's the beauty of actually using something like this. So what I've actually done on this particular piece is just done a few little drops, fringing I actually call this, with some beads, and it's also got a couple of O beads to decorate on that as well, and some little sort of silver pearls and things like that. So it's just a matter of picking up through, these are some 6mm, I can't remember what they're called, but I think I got these from Linda up at Banjo's Bead House. So I'm making sure that I'm not going right to the edge because remember we're going to cover over that edge at a later stage. And I'm just adding on some little fringe decoration. And with the little grey beads, what I've done is put a demi round. You might have heard me rave on about demi rounds in other things. I absolutely love these and I'm using them in all sorts of things at the moment. A demi round and then a little tiny size 11 on the top, sorry, size 15 on the top of that. And then when you actually go all the way back through, I skip over that size 15 and go through the demi and the 4mm grey matte bead there and go back through, and that creates this nice little sort of stop-start finish as well. So it's just a matter then of fray stop. Yeah, fray stop might help. I haven't actually tried that to learn, so I'm not sure how that would work, but I tend to find that I'm trying to keep the pleats in place as well. So using something like this sort of edging really helps with keeping the pleats in place and covering over the fray. But I think it's a good suggestion. If you've actually tried it, let us know in the comments how fray stop actually works. I'd be interested to see. Hello, Laura, my friend from Texas. Nice to see you here too. Missed seeing you this year at Bead and Button, but hope you're keeping well over there in Texas. So I'm just adding on, and I tend to like to work in sort of odd numbers when I'm doing fringing. I don't know why, I just think it sort of sits better. There's probably some scientific reason why odd numbers tend to work better than even. But you can see here I've got my 3 pink pearls attached. I'm now just finishing off with a couple of the grey ones. So again, it's the 4mm pearl, the demi round size 11 and then a size 15. And you might have noticed I'm actually not really taking much notice or care of where I'm placing this. I mean, there is, of course, all care, but I'm really not trying to be too precise. I'm really just adding where they fit nicely, I suppose, to finish that off. This is one of the real beauties of sort of a bead embroidery free form project, is that you don't have to be too precise and it becomes a really organic and unique piece. So you can see there I've now attached, similar to how I've done on the other piece, ironically that looks pretty much the same even though I wasn't really trying to do that, my fringing, that's the decoration. And now becomes the tricky part about doing the edging. So what I'm trying to do now is capture all of this Shibori silk and edge together. And to actually do that, we need a piece of ultra suede. So ultra suede is sort of a really nice velvety finished fabric, and it's something that we will glue on to our backing fabric, cut that away, and then do the edge. So I tend to use most of the time an E6000 glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that long thread on there because I want to continue to use that. Add some glue onto the back of my piece here when it comes out. Yes, Adam, you can hear me all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So I've put some glue. I haven't been sort of too precise where I'm going to add that. And I have really tried to avoid the edges because we are going to be stitching through that. I'm now just placing my ultra suede over the top like that. And again, with my sort of sharp scissors, I want to trim away that excess as well. But I want to make sure that I leave my long thread because we're going to be using it. So I'm just sort of doing that very gently and trimming around my piece like that. So you can see now I've got my piece here with, oh gosh, I've cut that a bit short, haven't I? I'm going to have to do that again. Ignore what I just did then. I get another piece. This is the tricky part, is making sure that it's not too short. Had I left that too short, it could end up a little bit like, I saw it on one of my other earlier pieces. You can end up with a bit of a gap showing at the back. So yeah, I want to make sure that I haven't got that. So I'm going to just reapply that ultra suede again and try not to cut it so finely. See, this is the beauty of watching something live. You get to see all of my mistakes as well. So this time I'm trying to cut a little bit closer to the ultra suede and the foundation fabric and not cut so much underneath. Pull my thread out of the way. Much better job, Paula. Much better this time. So I'll move those pieces out of the way. And this is where the edging becomes the real critical and feature part of bead embroidery. So bead embroidery uses a stitch called, well, it's called sort of like a blanket stitch, I suppose. And I'm using some size 11s to do this in one of my favourite colours, the Cranberry CZ Silver, a Miyuki bead. I love these. They're a really good uniform shape. And what I'm going to do is I want to try and capture those pleats every time. So to do a bead embroidery, and this, I will keep talking during this because it's pretty boring to watch, but I start off with picking up 2 beads and then I'm going to go through that second bead added like that. Just pull my thread tight so that that bead is actually sitting with its hole facing towards the outside. Now I'm going to do this all the way around my piece. So I'm coming up through the ultra suede, the foundation fabric and the Shibori silk. And picking up a bead, going through and making sure that the hole is facing towards the outside. So picking up a bead, going back through and hole facing towards the outside. Now you can see there, I'm actually capturing each time that little tiny edge of that Shibori silk as well, and trying to keep those pleats that we've carefully placed in line as well, so that the pleats still remain a feature on a piece like this. See there that I picked up all 3 of those. And we want to try and avoid having too deep a stitch here too, because you don't really want that stitch to be seen. With my method of actually going through and adding some more decorative elements onto that edge, things like this little pleat here will be covered over with that edge. So I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around. So this is bead embroidery edging, I think, is one of the most prettiest ways to finish off a piece, and I actually have taken lately to using a demi round in to finish them off, and it just creates a really nice lacy effect, and it's a really flat finish against a bead embroidery project. Something like this, I don't think it works as well because of the fraying of the shibori. You do need to have something of a little bit more substance, so that's where the size 11s work really well for something like this. So I keep going all the way around. This is where I think it'd be great to have some, you know, time lapse and do it much quicker. But then, of course, you don't get the beauty of seeing me do this live and, you know, making mistakes and owning up to those mistakes as well, because we can all learn from that. So you've just learned how not to cut your your backing fabric too close to your piece. So for those who've sort of joined a little bit later, I'm doing a demonstration on Shibori Silk today. And this is based off, my friend Alex actually asked me to demonstrate how I use this. So thank you, Alex, for the suggestion. And if anybody else has got other suggestions of things that they would like me to demonstrate, by all means, just send me a message or have a chat to me about it. If I don't know how to do it, I'm sure I'm happy to learn too. But if it's something that's sort of beading related or using particular components, I think last month I did something on lace. The previous month I did a project on using glass flowers. So those Facebook Live videos are still available on this Facebook page, and there's also other information on my website about both of those projects as well. So by all means, if there's something you'd like to learn, please let me know, and I'll do my best to demonstrate and show that. I don't know if I'm practically perfect, Laura, but I try my best. I'd certainly try my best. So yeah, by all means, let me know if there's something else that you would like to see me learn. And you can see I'm coming to the point part of my teardrop shape here. And what I want to try and do is end up with one bead on one side here and one bead on the other side here. Paula, we cannot see your work in the comments. Can you move up to here? Is that better? Give me a thumbs up. I'll try and remember to work that. It's hard. I'm not going to complain because it's not hard. It's just I've got to remember to move. So please just tell me to move if that makes things easier. So as I said, what I want to try and do is have one bead on one side of the point and one on the other. So I've just sort of maneuvered so that is split. Can you see that there, that I've got one on one side and one on the other? But of course that dicky little bit that's sitting out the top there, we're going to be covering over that, so you won't see that shortly as well. So I'm just going to continue going all the way around, capturing, as I said, the foundation fabric, the ultra suede and the silk all in one go, and really trying to keep those pleats as perfectly positioned as I can. So you can see now the pleats are capturing really nicely there. If you've joined me a bit later, what I actually did at the very start was tacked down the Shibori silk all the way around the edge. So there are some notes on my website about how I actually do that. And of course you can go back and re-watch, you know, if you're really keen, how I did that at the start of this video. So I'm continuing to go all the way around. And I hope everyone else is enjoying their freedom. Lockdown in Melbourne is pretty crappy at the moment, but we just have to soldier on and get through it. So we're up to day 3 now of our second round of lockdown. So 6 weeks in total this time around. Hopefully it doesn't continue to go on after that, but I'm not sure how the other states in Australia feel about us Victorians at the moment, but it's not my fault. I've stayed home and done what I'm supposed to do. So each time I'm just really trying to be really careful to capture the 3 pieces of fabric with the beaded edge. And you can see here, like some of these pleats are still sitting out on top and they're a little bit loose. Sorry, I'll just move up there. A little bit loose, but I am going to be covering that over so you won't see that when we get to that point. I'll keep doing that all the way around. Could you use a little fray stopper? Yeah, Dee actually, Talone actually suggested that. I've actually never used fray stopper, so you possibly could use it. Don't know. It's probably worth me nicking over to Spotlight because that is an essential service and open, and it's not very far from my house. I could walk over there and grab some fray stopper and try it. And if anyone else has used fray stopper on Shibori, let me know. I'd be curious to see how it actually works. I think, as I said, one of the beauties that I like about this is the ability to do some really fancy edging, because it covers up any sort of frayed parts, but it also gives a bit of a different look to your Shibori projects and bead embroidery projects as well. If you're doing just a standard bead embroidery project, you might only just do this basic blanket stitch edge and nothing else. But what I tend to do with the Shibori is add a few extra elements so that it covers over that fray, gives another visual element to the piece as well, but also makes it just look that little bit special when we've finished it. So I'm almost at the end here. Old speedy beater. It's very handy to be a speedy beater at times like this. I used to get a bit offended when people say I was speedy, but now it's like a superpower. I use it to my advantage. So you can see here I'm almost at the end. And remember when I very first started this stitch, I started with 2 beads, even though I've only picked up 1 every time since then. And we're going to loop back to that very first bead. That one didn't go through right. Just got to make sure you flip them the right way. So look at that, it's a miracle. I've landed right at the very right spot. And what I want to do now is to actually just come back into that very first bead that I added. Come back through my beadwork a couple of times, and that will just straighten up nicely like that. And I've got a really nice edge piece there. So I'm just going to try and capture that large pleat that's escaping. And now you can see I've got my bead embroidery blanket stitch all the way around. And what I want to do now is cover over something. Sometimes those petals can be part of the pleats, can be part of the design. Absolutely they can. And I think the part of the design part of it is filling in places like this area here and, you know, potentially at these edges, but I think it's really untidy if we have any of the frayed edges. So you can see in something like this one here, the pleats are certainly part of that feature. And because this is a wider piece, I've actually stretched that Shibori silk out further so you can get to see those different colours and things there. And, you know, there's a nice little bit here of an open, deliberate frayed part there. And there's another little bit in here as well. But it gives a really nice sort of 3D look and feel to it. Paula, can you only buy Shibori silk online? I have only ever bought it in person, Jackie, at places like the Bead Expo. I think Bead Essence had some there last year. So I think I got some of it there. Shibori Silk from places in the States is certainly where I have brought it in person. And I know that Margaret Mueller did a demonstration at the Bead Expo or one of our shows a couple of years ago. So there certainly is some ways that you can learn it as well. I haven't learnt it, and I just tend to buy things. Bead Essence has the Shibori Silk in Australia. There you go. Thank you, Linda. So now I'm going to do what I've called this sort of inside edge here on the piece. So you can see here, this inside edge is raised up over my edge piece. So that covers all of my little bits of fraying, etc. And then I've added some little pearls. So what I've got now is some size 15 beads. Again, it's the CZ silver ones from Joe Ivy, some Mayuki beads. And what I'm going to do is pick up just 3 beads every time and then go back through this next edge bead. So what that does is it starts to sit up and give me a nice little frame, I suppose you could call it, for adding something on later. So again, I pick up 3 beads and then I go back through the next bead, just like that. And that little picot, that's the correct term, is going to be perfect for adding the size 3mm pearls each time. So I continue to go all the way around, adding on 3 beads every time, and hope and pray that I've got an even number. That'll be another mistake I might have to fix if I haven't got an even number. Even numbers are best for this type of thing. I could be, you know, really organised and count it and make sure, but that'd be boring. I tend to just wing it and hope that I've got an even number because, you know, really, I've got a 50-50 chance of it being even. But you could be a bit more technical and count it if you wanted to. If I haven't got an even number, I'll just fudge that at the end or at the top. I'll work that out. See, there's another beader's secret that I've actually just let you let you know that sometimes I don't count things that I probably should count them. So you can see here my little picot that's going all the way around the edge. I've told my husband he has to stay outside while I'm filming. He would like to come and have a bit of a sticky nose, but no, he can stay outside and do other jobs. Okay, now you'll remember when I did that very top piece earlier, I wanted to make sure that I had a point, I had a bead either side of the point. And this is why, because what I want to do is make sure that that point that's at the top here, I want to actually go over that with 5 beads rather than just the 3, because I'm trying to get a bit of a deeper V there. Sorry, a V here. So what I'm going to do here at this top one is actually add on 5 beads rather than the 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 5 on my needle there, and then I'm going to come across to that second one here. And that little bit of a deeper V there, you can see here, there's a deeper one on the first one. So that is where I've just added 5 beads on that second one. Paula needs a cross on her bead mat. Oh, a cross. What was the cross do? Your hand keeps moving out of the screen. Oh, I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best. So again, I'm going to keep coming through and adding 3 beads. But remember, at the very top of my point there, I've added 5. Now that's not a shibori technique. That's just my sort of design process in doing that. But it will help with creating a nice deep point at the top of this finished earring when we get to that point. Not only did I make an earring with this, but I also made a pendant as well. And the pendant uses exactly the same techniques, but it's just a bigger version. And I originally did start that as a as an earring, but by the time I'd added all the edge on, I thought it became too big. So that's where it actually turned into being a pendant instead. And as I said, same techniques, few extra bead embellishments on there, including a beaded bail and a little sort of decorative flower motif that I did on the top of that as well. And I'll just show you that while I'm here. So initially I did do this one as an earring size, and when you can see it in comparison to the actual finished one, way too big. So I did turn that into a pendant then, but exactly the same technique that I've used in the earring, other than the addition of this sort of top piece here and the beaded bail as well. So yes, you can adapt this. You need a template for your shape every time. You need to cut out your foundation fabric to that templated shape. And then you also need to cut your Shibori silk, tack it and trim it to the size that you want it to be or the shape you want it to be. And then your backing fabric, as in your ultra suede, will be exactly the same shape as your template as well. So as I said, there are notes for all of this currently up on my website under the blog area, so working with Shibori silk and beading. So I've written down a few notes about how I've used it, so by all means go there. I've got some pointers then and how I purchase it. Oh, thank goodness, it's an even number. Whew, that was a lucky get. So I'm almost at the end here of adding the 3 little picots. So when I've done that, here comes the magic part, is adding these little 3mm pearls that are going to cover over all of our frayed edges. So you can see there, right all the way around now, I've got that little frame of 3 beads. And then I'm going to come back up through and come out through the point of one of those picots. Yeah, like this. So you can see my needle is coming out of the point of one of those 3 beads. And then I'm going to add some grey 3mm pearls. And these are, I reckon, my most used 3mm pearl. I love them. The grey is such a really nice colour. I get these from Michelle Whitaker at Beadworks more often than not. So it's a bit of a standard one for me. I love these 3mm grey pearls. So I'm just now going to go through that little top little top picot bead in between every one. You can see now I'm now forming this really nice little framed inside edge over the top of my Shibori. Can you see that? Now there is Paula. What size centimetre length is the one you're doing? I can measure that for you, Lavinia. The finished size is 4 centimetres. 4 centimetres by 3 at its widest point. So by the time we add a little bit more edging, etc., it does become a bit bigger. The pendant size, I think, is probably about 4 by 7, which, as I said, I think is probably a little bit big for an earring. So as you can see, I'll keep going through and adding my little 3mm pearls every time in between those picots. And when I sort of pull that tautly, it just sits over nicely over the edge of my beadwork. And you remember at the top here I added 5 rather than 3. So that's just going to create a little bit of a deeper point on the top of my beadwork there as well. And you can see here, when I added the 5, I've just gone from 3 over to the 5 point there.
Gosh, I hope you can't hear that in the background. That's our robotic vacuum going downstairs. So, well, at least someone's doing some housework while I'm sitting up here beading. So you can see now, see that lovely little point of 5 that's at the top of our earring? And they're the sort of little details and finishes, I think, that's what makes beading unique, is the ability to really personalise and make a piece that is really unlike any other. So if you have heard me talk about beading, you'll know how passionate I am about it. But I love the fact that it's just such a unique craft form that enables me to use lots of colours and different finishes and different beads to create, unique artisan pieces that can be a one-off. They're often very hard to replicate, even though people do ask me to. I have to remember what I've done in previous versions. A woman actually asked me to make her a replacement earring for one that she'd lost. I said, yep, sure, I can do that. And then she sent me the photo and I couldn't remember what colour bead I'd used at the very bottom of that. So I just made her 2. I said you can have an extra spare one because it is hard to remember exactly what I do every time. I should write that stuff down probably, but a lot of it's up in my head. I tend to be the resource and knowledge point for all of those things. So I'm almost at the end here again. As I said, this is where my speedy beading comes in handy. And one more size 3mm pearl. Come on, pick it up. And I'll just go through that the first pearl added. So now you can see that sort of ugly frayed edges that we've had have all disappeared. They've all gone underneath that lovely little pearl edge that I just put on. So there's the occasional little frayed bit that sits out. So what I tend to do is just get my scissors and just trim that away so it doesn't necessarily show. Or you can very gently get a thread burner if you're game enough to trim that away as well. But it does tend to be a little bit stinky, I think, so I tend to just use the scissors and just cut away any of those bits that are showing. So the next part we want to do is finish off now these outside holes. Now you don't have to, but this is sort of my technique, is I like to finish off having any outside holes actually showing. So what I'm actually going to do now is do the next little bit of sort of like a couching technique that goes over the edge of that. So the front of this is actually finished. So I'm going to come back down through to the outside edge like that. And go back to my size 11 beads, and I'm just going to pick up one size 11 and then go through that thread bridge that's right there between the 2 edge beads, and then flip that so that that bead is sitting outwards that way. I hope you can see what I'm sort of doing there. So I'm just going to quickly do that all the way around. This actually is quickly, this one. So pick up a bead, go through the thread bridge, that's it. Pick up a bead, go through the thread bridge. And you can see there, those beads are now sitting with their holes going this way rather than outwards. So that little gap that we're going to have left there is a great space to add what is my newest favourite bead shape, a demi round. And I've been using this technique for a little while, finishing off my bead embroidery projects with this type of an edge and then adding the demi round, and it's just a really nice finish. It adds a little bit more colour to the piece and make sure that there's no holes, etc. in there as well. So I am just doing that all the way around now with my size 11 CZ silver beads. So has anyone got any other suggestions of things they would like me to do a Facebook Live on next month? By all means, just send me through a message or give me a call if you've got my number, or have a chat to me about it. I'd love to have some more ideas of what to do. I'm happy to talk about anything, so by all means, let me know. Now, when I come to the top of this point, because we've got sort of the 2 beads sitting either side of it, I'll tend to add an extra bead in here. So that means that I will put 2 beads through the same thread bridge path, only because that gives a nice point then, again at the top of our teardrop shape. Paula, what a great finish. Oh, thank you for sharing. Oh, that's my pleasure. My pleasure to share this, Leah. I love to share and talk about beading wherever I possibly can. So you can see here, now I'm continuing to go all the way around my piece. So through each thread bridge, like this. Now, if you're actually interested, I have got some online Zoom workshops that are scheduled over the next sort of month or so, and I've got another new design coming up in August. I've done these on a Saturday. The next couple are on Saturdays, although I do have another one starting on Monday. So the ones that are coming up are what's called our sparkly studs or dangles. So it's how I make my sparkly stud earrings, and a dangle version as well for people who don't like studs. So they're coming up, and all that information is available on my website. So it's a Zoom workshop where you'll actually get to talk to me, not just listen to me talk like I am now on Facebook Live. And you can use your own beads in those projects, because they're ones that most of you should have, those beads, if you're a beader. If not, myself or Linda from Banjo's Beads can help out with kits for some of those projects as well. I'm never going to be a bead seller, so I love to work with other bead sellers like Linda and Angie to help me out with those projects. Angie's done a whole lot of tape measure and cupcake crown kits for me in the past, and Linda's helping me with some of these ones. So you can see I'm almost at the end. So yes, if you're interested, there is some upcoming workshops coming up via Zoom. So you will get a complete set of instructions for those as well, and all the details of what you need. And the new piece that I'm going to be doing in August is actually going to be called Royal Illusion. So one of my Facebook followers came up with the name Illusion, and then Linda and I workshopped it a bit yesterday, and it's now going to be called Royal Illusion, because the piece actually looks like say a badge that you would get if you're getting something from the Queen, like an Order of Australia or something like that. That's what I think anyway. So it's a Royal Illusion piece. So you can see I'm right at the very end here now, so I'm going to go through the very first thread bridge and add one more piece. So now you can see all the way around, I've got this lovely little gap that I'm just going to fill with a demi round. So come back through that first bead added in this section here, and now I'm just going to pick up a demi round bead and pop one of those in between that little gap. Look how beautifully that fits in there. So I think I talked about these beads yesterday, about how they're my new favourite, and they really are. They're the tiniest little slices of glass. They're perfectly uniform, and they just fit into gaps like this so well. That one's just flipped around on its thread. I'm just going to take that one off. They fit really well in these little gaps, and what a finish they actually give when you actually use them in these projects. Now, if you're a really keen observer, you'll notice that the ones I'm using in this particular earring are going to be different to the ones that are in the first earring, because I ran out of that first colour. So these, unfortunately, there'll be one solo earring, and then I'll possibly make another one now to match this with this lovely burgundy sort of coloured demi-round. But the first pair have got a more of an amethyst colour in it, and I think they were a sample I got from bead and button. So when you go to Bead and Button Show, lots of the bead sellers will give you different samples of things, and yeah, I was lucky enough to have some of those in my stash, but obviously not enough to finish this project with. And when I went to get all my supplies ready to go this morning, I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to change colours on this one. So I think it still looks really good though. Actually, I probably think it looks better than the other colour. So you can see here I'm up at my top point here as well. So because we added that nice little extra bead there at the top, that's going to give us a nice space there to add that demi round in. Oh, am I going to have enough thread just all the way around? And the last thing to do on a piece like this is to add the little loop for the earring wire to hook on. And if I had enough thread, I would probably go all the way back around and just use the same thread, but I won't have enough thread, so I'm going to have to add a new thread shortly to do that. And that, all I've done for this particular earring is just create a really simple loop of some size 15 beads that I've then hooked an earring wire onto. So for something like the pendant, I did a beaded bail rather than the earring loop, and I'll show you that again in some detail in a moment. And the beaded bail is one of my favourite things to do when making pendants, because it's a really secure way just to hang your chain or your beaded strap through it. And I tend to use things like peyote stitch or herringbone to create those beaded bails. The Royal Illusion class has actually got a beaded bail made out of demi rounds. So there you go. There's all my favourites coming together. Oh gosh, this thread is really annoying me now because it's so short, but I think I've got enough to get right to that end. This is the beader's compromise. Do I add a new thread or do I continue to work with a short one? And we've all done it where we really should have just added a new thread in, but you know, you don't really want to stop what you're doing either. So I'm going to make this just nearly all the way through. And I think this finish actually, I'll go back and show you the template size that we started with. This finish has just added that little bit extra dimension and width to the piece as well. Finished off any sort of frayed edges or bits and pieces must go. And see you, Leah. Nice to see you on here. See you again soon. Okay. And look at that. There's now the finished piece with all those sort of demi round things all the way around. I could have used one of your short needles. Rosemary Cox, you know how I feel about a short needle, but I could have. So I'm just going to tie that piece off now with that thread. As I said, if I don't really like short needles. I'd try using them, but missed the beginning. Jan, yeah, you can play it again, and I've actually got some notes up on my website about how I've applied the Shibori Silk with a tacking method, so you will be able to see that information available, but I'll run through it very briefly again at the end. So you can see now I've got my demi rounds all the way around my edge. I've got my nice little raised 3mm pearl edge, which is covering over any frayed parts. And I'm just going to trim off my tail thread. So that piece is almost finished, other than just my little loop for earring wire. And lucky I've got another needle already thread here. So the earring wire, it's just one of these simple little shepherd hook ones, or French hooks I think they're called. And that's just gone over the top here. So I'm actually just going to come up through a couple of those beads there. Just knot that, you know, go back through the thread bridge there and run a little sort of half hitch knot there as well. And then just pick up some beads. So probably, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 beads, something, probably 9 I think will do. There's 9. I do like to do an odd amount of beads for these types of little loops. And do my little loop over the top there. And then I'm just going to come back through those beads again, which is what makes it a little bit more secure. Needles come unthreaded again. And go through that a couple of times, because this is where the most wear and pressure is going to be with the earring wire on that particular loop. So I'll go through that as many times as my beads and threads will allow me to, 3 or 4 probably. I tend to use a bigger needle most of the time because I bend and break the smaller ones as in gauge. So this is probably about a size 10 needle, I suppose. So I've now knotted that off a couple of times. I'm now going to just trim away that thread. You can trim it away, you can use a thread burner, whatever you wish. So you can see now there is a finished earring. How long did that take me? Oh, an hour. That's not too bad considering I talked the whole time. So there is one finished earring. It, of course, is not going to be a pair to the other one because remember what I said about I didn't have enough of the same colour beads. But I'll make one now to match this one. So there is one. Here is the other. And here is the pendant as well. So I first started off with my little tiny template, which is this size, to make that earring size. So you can see the variance in differences. Paula, can you explain demi and O beads? Yes, I can. Demi beads are perfectly formed rounded beads. So you can see here on my hand, it's a little round tiny bead. This is a size 11 demi bead. Just bear with me and I'll grab an O bead and I will show you the difference between them. In terms of an O bead, I'm not sure what the technical difference would be, but I tend to find that the demis are rounder than what an O bead is. So an O bead is this one here. You can see there it's sort of much flatter than what a demi is. It tends to have a flat profile as such, rather than a rounded profile. And the O beads only come in one size. Demis come in 6, 8s and 11s. This is a size 6 demi bead, and that one there is probably much the same size as that O, but you can see the difference in width. So they're just a bit thicker, I think, than the O beads tend to be flatter. They also come in size 8. So 6, 8 and 11 in the demis tend to be, the most of what I use. So as I said, here is the 3 finished pieces of my Shibori Silk demonstration. Earrings, not matching because I didn't have the same demi colours here to use on the edges, but I will make another one in this colourway. There's the pendant piece, which is a bit of a larger version of that piece as well. And that one has got a beaded bail. So you can see at the top there, what I've done is just a peyote beaded bail that sits over there. What's Jackie? Why do I like odd numbers? I think odd fits better. It looks better visually for me. And that just tends to be what I do. And I think then with an odd, and this probably sounds ridiculous, but with an odd bead, I just think the little wire sits nicely on top of one of the odd beads. So that's why I tend to use it. So I hope that's been really helpful for people. As I said, there's notes on my website about how I've used Shibori Silk, including the tacking method, attaching your foundation fabric and your ultra suede together, how to cover over and use a different edge technique so that you don't see any of that fraying with your piece. And just for some visual delight, you can see here how I've used a netting piece over technique over that particular cuff there as well, and then done some extra work on those beads on the edge there also. Thanks everybody. I'm just going to take the camera and flip around.
thanks everyone for watching. I've really appreciated your time and questions and listening to me talk. As I said, if there's suggestions of other things you'd like me to do, by all means let me know, and I'll do my best to come up with them. And I really enjoy doing this on a Saturday for everyone as well. So thanks everybody. Bye bye.